Gangsta Granny, written by David Walliams, illustrated by Tony Ross. Chapter 11. Cheesy Beans and Sausage. Ben sped home on his bike, not even noticing his burning legs and aching chest. He was going so fast he thought the police might give him a speeding ticket. As the wheels raced round, so did his mind. Could his boring old granny really be a gangster? A gangster granny? That must be why she liked books about gangsters so much. She was one. He slid through the back door just as the familiar Strictly Stars Dancing theme tune blasted out from the living room. He had made it home just in time. But as Ben was about to disappear upstairs and pretend he had been in his bedroom doing his homework, Mum burst into the kitchen. "What are you doing?" she asked suspiciously. "You look very sweaty." "Oh, nothing," said Ben, feeling very sweaty. "Look at you," she continued as she approached him. "You are sweating like a pig." Ben had seen a few pigs in his life, and none of them had been sweating. In fact, pig fans everywhere will tell you that pigs don't even have sweat glands, so they can't sweat. Wow, this book is actually really educational. "I'm not sweating," Ben protested. Being accused of sweating made him sweat even more. "You are sweating. Have you been out running?" "No," replied a now very sweaty Ben. "Ben, don't lie to me. I'm your mother," she said, pointing at herself, a false nail flying off into the air in the process. Her false nails came off a lot. Once Ben had even found one in his microwavable paella bolognese. "If you haven't been out running, Ben, then why are you sweating?" Ben had to think fast. The Strictly Stars Dancing theme tune was coming to an end. I was dancing," he blurted out. "Dancing?" Mum didn't look convinced. Ben was no Flavio Flavioli, and of course, he hated ballroom dancing. "Yes, well, I've changed my mind about ballroom dancing. I love it." "But you said you hated it," shot back an increasingly suspicious Mum. "Many, many, many times. Only the other week you said that you would rather eat your own bogies than watch that rubbish. Hearing you say that was like a dagger through my heart." Mum was becoming visibly upset at the memory. "I'm sorry, Mum. I really am." Ben reached out a hand to comfort her and another false nail fell on the floor. "But now I love it, honestly. I was just watching Strictly through the crack in the door and copying all the moves." Mum beamed with pride. She looked as if her whole life suddenly had meaning. Her face turned strangely happy yet sad, as if this was destiny. "Do you want to be," she took a deep breath, "a professional dancer?" "Where's my cheesy beans and sausage, wife?" called Dad from the living room. "Shut your face, Pete." Mum's eyes were wet with tears of joy. She hadn't cried so much since Flavio was kicked out of the show in week 2 last year. Flavio had been forced to partner Dame Rachel Prejudice, who was so podgy all he could do was drag her around the floor. "Well, Ben desperately searched for a way to get out of this one. "Yeah?" That really wasn't it. "Yes, I knew it," cried Mum. "Pete, come in here a moment. Ben has got something he needs to tell you." Dad trudged in wearily. "What is it, Ben? You're not joining the circus, are you? My word, you are sweaty." "No, Pete," said Mum slowly and deliberately, as if she was about to read out the name of a winner at an awards ceremony. "Ben doesn't want to be a silly old plumber anymore." "Thank goodness for that," said Dad. "He wants to be?" Mum looked at her son. "Tell him, Ben." Ben opened his mouth, but before he could say anything, Mum chimed in. "Ben wants to be a ballroom dancer." "Oh, there is a God!" exclaimed Dad. He looked up at the nicotine-stained ceiling as if he might catch a glimpse of the Divine One. "He was just practicing in the kitchen." jabbered Mum excitedly, copying all the moves from the show. Dad looked into his son's eyes and shook his hand manfully. That's wonderful news, my boy. Your mum and me haven't achieved much in our lives, what with Mum being a nail polisher. I am a nail technician, Pete, corrected Mum scornfully. There is a world of difference, Pete. You do know that. Nail technician, sorry. And me being just a boring old security guard because I was too fat for the police. The most excitement I've had all year was when I stopped a man in a wheelchair speeding out of the store with a tin of custard concealed under his blanket. But you, becoming a ballroom dancer, well, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened to us. The very greatest, said Mum. The very, very greatest, agreed Dad. Really? It's the very, very, very greatest, said Mum. Let's just agree that it's extremely great, said Dad, irritated. Only, I warn you, boy, it's not going to be easy. If you train 8 hours a day, every day for the next 20 years, you might just get on the TV show. Maybe you can do the American version, exclaimed Mum. Oh, Pete, just imagine our boy, a huge star in America. Well, let's not jump the gun, wife. He's not won the British one yet. Right now we have to think about entering him for a junior competition. You're right, Pete. Gail told me there's one in the town hall just before Christmas. Crack open the sparkling wine, wife. Our son is going to be a cha-cha-cha champion. A naughty word exploded in Ben's head. How on earth was he going to get out of this? Chapter 12. The Love Bomb. Ben had spent the whole of Sunday morning being measured up by Mum for his dance outfit. She had stayed up through the night sketching possible designs. Under duress, he was forced to choose one and pointed a limp finger at the one he thought was the least hideous. Mum's hand-drawn options ranged all the way from the embarrassing to the humiliating. There was the woodland, fruit cocktail, thunder and lightning, accident and emergency, ice and a slice, the hedgerow and badger, the quality street, eggs and bacon, confetti, the underwater world, burning love, cheese and pickle, the solar system, piano man. But the one that Ben thought was the least worst was the love bomb. We will have to find you a nice young girl to partner with for the competition, said Mum excitedly as she accidentally ran one of her fake nails under the sewing machine and it exploded. Ben hadn't thought about dance partners. Not only was he going to have to dance, he was going to have to dance with a girl. And not just any girl, but a revoltingly precocious, sparkly, fake-tanned, leotard-wearing, over-made-up one. Ben was still at the age when he thought girls were as appealing as frog spawn. Oh, I'm just going to dance on my own, he sputtered. A solo piece, exclaimed Mum. How original. In fact, I can't stand here talking all day. I better go and practice, said Ben as he disappeared upstairs to his room. He shut the door, turned on his radio, then climbed out of the window and raced over to Granny's bungalow on his bike. So, you were running off into the woods when Lord Davenport started shooting at you, Ben was eagerly prompting his Granny. But for the moment, her mind looked blank. Was I? Said Granny, looking increasingly befuddled. That's where the story ended last night. You said you had snatched the ring from the Davenport's bedroom and were running across the lawn when you heard shots. Oh, yes, muttered Granny, her face suddenly illuminated. Ben smiled broadly. He suddenly remembered how he had used to love his Granny telling stories when he was younger, transporting him to a magical world. A world where you paint pictures in your mind that are more thrilling than all the movies or TV shows or video games in the universe. Only a couple of weeks ago he had pretended to be asleep to stop her telling him a bedtime story. Clearly he'd forgotten how thrilling stories could be. "I was running and running," continued Granny breathlessly, as if she actually was running. "And I heard a shot ring out, then another. I knew from the sound that it was definitely a shotgun rather than a rifle." "What's the difference?" asked Ben. "Well, a rifle shoots one bullet and is more accurate, but a shotgun sprays hundreds of little deadly balls of lead. Any idiot can hit you if they fire a shotgun in your direction." "And did he?" said Ben. His smile had faded now. He was genuinely worried. "Yes, but luckily I was far away by then, so I was only grazed. I could hear the dogs barking too. They were hunting me, and I was only a small girl. If they had caught me, the hounds would have ripped me to shreds." Ben gasped in horror. "So how did you get away?" he asked. "I took a chance. I couldn't outrun the dogs through the forest. The fastest runner in the world couldn't, but I knew the woods really well. I used to play in them for hours with my brothers and sisters. I knew if I could just get across the stream, then the dogs would lose the scent." "How come?" "Dogs can't follow a scent across water, and there was a great oak tree just on the other side of the stream. If I climbed that tree, I might be safe." Ben couldn't imagine his granny climbing stairs, let alone a tree. She had lived in her bungalow ever since he could remember. "More shots rang out through the darkness as I ran towards the stream," continued the old lady, "and I stumbled in the gloom of the forest. I tripped on a tree root and fell face first in the mud. Scrambling to my feet, I turned round to see an army of men on horseback, led by Lord Davenport. They were carrying flaming torches and holding shotguns. The whole forest was lit up with the fire from the torches. I jumped into the stream. It was around this time of year in the depths of winter, and the water was icy. The cold shocked me, and I could hardly breathe. I clapped my hand over my mouth to stifle a scream. I could hear the dogs getting nearer and nearer, barking and barking. There must have been dozens of them. I looked behind me and I could see their sharp teeth gleaming in the moonlight. So I waded across the stream and started climbing the tree. My hands were muddy and my legs and feet were wet, and I kept slipping down the trunk. I frantically rubbed my hands on my nightshirt and began to climb again. I scrambled to the very top of the tree and stayed as still as I could. I heard the dogs and the army of Davenport's men follow the stream down to a different part of the forest. The dogs' ferocious barks became distant, and after a while the torches were just specks in the distance. I was safe. I shivered up that tree for hours. I waited until dawn, slid down the tree, and made my way back to our cottage. I crept into bed and lay there for a few moments before the sun rose. Ben could picture everything she described perfectly in his mind. Granny had him utterly spellbound. "Did they come looking for you?" he asked. "Well, no one got a good enough look at me, so Davenport had his men search everywhere in the village. Every cottage was turned upside down to look for the ring." "Didn't you say anything?" "I wanted to. I felt so guilty. But I knew if I owned up I would be in deep trouble. Lord Davenport would have me publicly flogged in the village square." "So what did you do?" "I swallowed it." Ben couldn't believe his ears. "The ring, Granny? You swallowed the ring?" "I thought it was the best way to hide it. In my stomach. A few days later it came out when I went to the toilet." "That must have been painful," said Ben, his bum wincing at the thought. Passing a big diamond ring out of his bottom didn't sound in any way enjoyable. "It was painful. Excruciating, in fact." Granny grimaced. "The good thing was that our cottage had been searched already from top to bottom. Not my bottom. To the bottom of the cottage, I mean," Ben chuckled. "And Davenport's men had moved on to search in the next village. So one night I went off into the woods and hid the ring. I placed it where no one would ever look, under a rock in the stream." "Clever," said Ben. "But that ring was only the first of many, Ben. Stealing it had been the biggest thrill of my life, and as I lay in bed each night, all I dreamed about was stealing more and more diamonds. That ring was just the beginning," continued Granny in a low whisper, staring deep into Ben's innocent young eyes, "of a lifetime of crime." I hope you enjoyed chapters 11 and 12. Join us next time for chapters 13 and 14.